Welcome, welcome. I am here with Patty Latchdaigle with Your Daily Nourishment. I am super excited to be able to be here. I met her at a farmer's market and she had some amazing things to say. I watched her talk. It was really great. She could tell us more about that. Just to introduce her, she's amazing, has a great personality, super great. And she agreed to do this podcast. We're going to do it on video too if you're listening. If you're listening, it's also on my podcast, OG Fit Health in 10 Minutes. And the YouTube page where it will be is Dr. Keith J. Lopez. And she is with Your Daily Nourishment. She has such a great story. And I'm not going to actually try and reproduce it. She's here, so I'll let her tell more of her story. You could just do a little introduction and then, or say as much as you'd like. And then I have like a few things to ask. Or we could just go like and have fun.
Well, hey, Keith, it was such a pleasure meeting you. Yes, I originally am from New Jersey. I did 20 years active duty Air Force, and I retired at the age of 60, just was not ready to fully retire. But at that time, I got really sick. My immune system was shutting down. I lost 30 pounds in the matter of 6 months. Um, it ended up I went to 3 different doctors and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And a friend of mine just says, "Hey, why don't we do epigenetic testing on you?" Which I didn't have a clue at that point in time. I knew she was working it. So we did the testing and I took a road trip out to Texas to meet with the doctor. And little did I know what I was going to find out. But I had a parasite at that point in time that was eating me alive from the inside out, like those little gremlins eating all my muscles away, and it was in every organ of my body. So it took about a 4 month detox to get that all out of me. Um, but then when I had the testing and went through the results with the doc, something else was pretty disturbing because 29 years ago, when my husband and I got married, we had 3 pregnancy losses. And what I found out from my genetic testing was that I have not only a folate absorption issue, but also a B12 absorption issue. And without the proper amount of folate, you cannot hold a pregnancy to full term.
Mhm.
So now I know, 29 years later, what the issue was with that. But not only me, my husband also had that same gene, that same folate absorption gene. So the two of us together, we just were not meant to have children at that point in time. Um, but anyway, it gave me the power and the strength and the the want and need to learn more about genetics. And then I had nutritional genomics fall into my lap. And I was like, what is this? And all about the nutrition that our DNA really needs to survive and ultimately live a strong lifespan. So the past 5 years, that's been me learning about nutrition and how to feed our genes, and no one of the two of us are the same. We're all unique in what our bodies need to be fed. So that's a little bit of me in a nutshell, the past 5 years.
I love that. I love that. It's so amazing to talk with you. I must say, I watched your video and it said a very similar thing. And I feel like you just said it all in like actually less time. Like it was only a 5.5 minute video and it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. And I just learned this the other day, so it's really fresh on my head. And I think it's worth mentioning, so I'm going to mention it. I was just writing it down and I wasn't going to mention it, but your vibrancy explaining all that being in person was like 1,000 times different. Some people would say it's like, oh, it's a little different. I'm really deep into speeches and speaking and the emotional transference because when we transfer the emotion, that gets people to move. That's why
Mhm.
movies are called movies because they move us. And we could say something, but people have said it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And
Right.
you said it really great on the video, yet right there, I felt a lot more life. And I like to pretend I'm speaking to one person, and I've learned this from great speakers because you speak to everyone, no one hears it. You speak to one person, everyone listens. So I also noticed this with a testimonial, right? And some people think, oh, you're just trying to like get people to. But the thing about a testimonial is when we're really working for a mission, not for like money or to like benefit just ourselves. When we're working for a mission, I could hear that in you. Like you healed yourself in so many ways with help of others, and you're like ready to help other people because you like had huge sacrifices, children, life, like surviving is different than thriving, and you were almost not surviving, and now I
Right.
can tell you're thriving. Like you
I
were
know.
you set up your booth, you're like it didn't to me I could see how it didn't matter like if you didn't reach anyone yet that is what you're there for, but you're still going to do it regardless because you're on a mission.
Yeah, it's like that one starfish sitting on the beach and you throw it back in the water. And I don't know if you've seen that little story, but the mother asked, "Why did you throw it back?" You know, it makes one difference. It makes a big difference to help just one starfish or one person. And that's how I feel. If I can save the life or help one person, I'm going to do it one person at a time.
A
It's
hundred
going to take me
percent
a long time, but I'm going to get there.
100%. You could get in contact with Patty with your daily nourishment. I didn't actually Google that to see if it just comes up quickly, but do you have yourdailynourishment.com or
It it should be published now. Yep. I've been working on it this week and um, it should be there. It's had a little bit of tweaking it needed. So if something doesn't pop up, please let me know. Get in there and fix it.
and do you have a social media account where people could get in touch with you?
Oh, I am on Facebook with at Patty Latch, Lach Daigle, Daigle. I'm on YouTube with the same name, Patty Latch Daigle. And that is Patty with a Y, not an I. Um, I'm on Instagram. I think I'm all over the place, except TikTok just doesn't thrill me.
Oh, it's so fun. We'll talk about that at some point. I think it's really fun. But it
And
is,
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well.
oh, cool, awesome, awesome. Yeah, it's nice to have the same name. I'm on all of them. It's funny. I'm not really. I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm not too active on there. But I'm active on all the other ones as Dr. Keith J. Lopez. Um, we need to get friends up if we haven't been already, so people could find us both easier by our both of our contacts. Hopefully, we will both share and more people will know us. So the other question I had, or that was a comment. But the other question I had is, I actually didn't finish that sentiment of like testimonials that when you're getting someone to respond and react, like it's so great to just talk with them. Because
Mhm.
my mentor actually put it this way of we would like to be able to know if it's working, how it could work better, if it's easy, and if it could work for other people. We just want to know that from our students or clients or whatever we call them. And when there's a gem dropped, then we were like, hey, could I share that? Because I think another person could benefit just from hearing that, whether or not they work with me. They could know that there's a possibility. So, excuse me, I mentioned that because if you're ever talking with clients like our students,
Mhm.
ask them that instead of saying, hey, could you record me a testimonial? It's a world of difference. It's such a world of difference. And I really didn't realize it that much when he said it, because he kind of said it in a different way. But, we all have different ways of saying it. So hopefully that gets
Right.
through to you because it'd be great for you to really reach more people. So many people that are, if you don't mind me asking, how many years have you been on this earth for?
66.
66. So many people that are 66 are like crying, suffering, decrepit, like with all due respect to them, their heart is still bright and beautiful, yet or you know, their heart actually might be decrepit also, but their spirit is so beautiful. And I love everyone, and they're also beautiful and have so much to teach. I learn from everyone. I was thinking of a quote the other day that said, if you can't learn from, if someone isn't learning from you, it's that person that lacks the intelligence, not you.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
um, I love that. When I see people aging, I'm like, why are you not getting better and better? Like, we get to apply wisdom when, excuse me, when we are aging, and it could reflect in our physical being. We don't have to be in pain for our whole life. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's usually some type of nutrient that we are missing. Um, I believe that nourishment and nutrition is actually more than just food. I love Christ saying that a man is defiled more by what comes out of his mouth than what goes in. And to me, that's how nutrition starts, is like us speaking the words that this does matter. Like not saying, it doesn't matter. One dish isn't going to kill you. That's how Buddha died, is eating one dish that like wasn't good. It was either like pork or mushroom, so goes the story. And he accepted it because he was being nice, and he died from one meal. And
Mm,
it's so possible to like have this quantum leap from one meal that gets us on a domino effect of eating amazingly, as opposed to eating to the point where it keeps us in bondage and we're pretty much suffering. Speaking of like getting gravitated towards food, I tell my students a lot and even make content about, we get influenced to eat. And it's not just the influence of our external community, it's our internal community. We have 4 pounds of bacteria in our stomach, and that's bacteria. We all have it, and some of us have parasites. Like a rat will actually go to a cat when it's infected with the parasite that a cat emits, which a lot of females know because you can't have a kitty litter box when you're pregnant because
right,
of toxoplasmosis.
right. And the
And
toxicity.
and if the rat gets infected, it will go to the cat. So what do you know the name of the parasite that you had?
No, I only know that it came from eating crab. So
Mm,
it was a seafood parasite.
very interesting. And
Yeah.
that was one time you had the parasite and it stayed with you for years.
Well, I don't know. I'm hoping it's gone, but I know it took 4 months to,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, it probably was there for a long time and then just totally started shutting my immune system down and shutting me down.
Do you eat
Um,
seafood anymore?
I do not eat shellfish. Um, and well, there's two reasons why. In having this epigenetic and nutritional genomics testing, I found that my body, uh, gets full of inflammation from high histamine foods. So that cuts out shrimp, it cuts out spinach, it cuts out kale, all those good high histamine foods that people love, not me. I also found I cannot eat nightshades, no potatoes, no tomatoes, no eggplant, any of the other nightshades, a long list. So if letting people know, if you're starting to get bloatedness or gassy and just not feeling good, maybe stay away from the yeast and the carbs and stay away from nightshades and stay away from
When
high
you say,
histamine
pardon
foods.
me, this one I got, this one I'm like real sensitive. That's a trigger word for me, carbs. What
Okay.
carbs do you mean specifically?
Breads, yeast, uh,
Like refined
processed
breads,
sugars.
even if it's like whole wheat bread, even if it's whole wheat pasta. What
Yeah.
about like um quinoa or rice bread or
But
Ezekiel
it
rice.
still turns into sugar.
Okay.
So I still don't eat it.
Okay. And then I'll go a little further because carbs to me are life. What about fruit? What about apples, oranges, coconut water?
I eat green apples, and I always eat them with sunflower butter, sun butter, because I don't eat peanut butter anymore.
Okay.
I learned from a gentleman who was a coffee pro that came to my table last weekend, as a matter of fact, who reiterated that peanuts, like coffee, get a lot of mold in them because
Aflatoxin.
they sit in dampness.
Hmm.
So, and that's what causes all these kids to have sensitivity to peanut butter. It's not so much the peanut butter itself, it's all the mold that's not been properly cleaned off the peanuts. So
100%.
a lot of people who drink coffee and the coffee beans have not been cleaned properly, end up with fungus and gut health issues because their coffee beans are not cleaned properly or processed properly.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So interesting. There's such a difference in the quality of food. It
Mhm.
almost is it's certainly as important as the quantity. And it's interesting because like we say don't compare apples to oranges, yet, even the same exact apple, whether it's a green or a red apple, like it really depends on the source and a lot of the source of our fruit, vegetable, and every food that we have, even meats and cheeses and seafood and nuts and seeds, come from thousands and thousands of miles away and maybe in
Mhm.
a factory for months. And that's where they could pick up mold. Yet, even just off the tree, it could be sprayed with tons of chemicals. It could pick up some mold. Peanuts, for instance, are grown. They're like a root, so they're underground and they're in a shell. And even if you grew the peanut properly, like perfectly, and took care of it, it's almost inevitable that one of them is might not be so good. And when I say might not be so good, it could be like black. Like if
Mm,
anyone eats dates a lot, if you, I actually don't find it on dates that are de-seeded. Not that I recommend de-seeded dates by any means
mhm.
or pitted dates. I actually like the pit, but when I'm opening the pit, especially medjool, but other dates too, it'll be black mold inside. And it's I think of it as a good thing because if a food doesn't go bad, it was never good except for honey. And it's important that our food biodegrades.
Mhm.
So my point about that is with peanuts, if we're making peanut butter and the company isn't like really adhering to high quality standards and they're like factory farming like Ford's conveyor belt, they may just put one nut in there one peanut in there, actually a legume, that is like moldy and it could just spoil a whole bunch. And when we say a whole bunch, like, it's not just one jar. Like most likely they're not mixing one jar, they're mixing a huge vat and then putting it into jars. Like
Right.
even with cows, like one hamburger theoretically has thousands of cows and the bacteria of thousands of cows.
Gives
So
me shivers.
yeah, it's really, and you didn't even see the video I'm thinking of was like, oh my Lord, like I don't even share that stuff because most people will just be like, it's so extreme that they will get so turned off by it that they won't even listen at all. Um, and it's interesting you mentioned folate because my first nutrition class, I was really enthralled, intrigued, enthusiastic about because it changed my life. I started getting good grades because I could think clearly because I changed the way I speak and then eat. And
Mhm.
someone in my class was in a wheelchair, and it was because of spinal bifida, which is usually in textbooks says that it's just folic acid or folate. I've
MTHFR gene. causes
So,
that.
so yeah, you mentioned another. See, I think it's always more than one thing. I think it's, we attribute it as one major thing, but there's like other things. Like someone is, that's why I said like it starts with our speaking patterns and then our,
Mhm,
right? And and then our food, and then if you're sleeping 1 or 2 hours a day, you're not you unless you're in like a theta meditative state and you're like no have 10,000 hours of meditation and you could figure out a way of getting in the same brainwave state as when we're
mhm,
sleeping. That's why I say like delta or theta. Most people have no idea what that is. Like we're stressed out and in beta most of the time.
mhm.
So we need like that organization time for our brain for sleep and to clear out mucoidal plaque from our brain. Um, or no, excuse me, amyloid plaque from our brain. So I want to hear you talk more. I'm kind of going on and on. You got
Oh,
me.
no, 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 that's okay. Recently, one of the other things I found that has also helped me to choosing what foods I'm eating. Have you heard of the Yucca app? Yuka?
It sounds very familiar.
So the Yucca app, it scans UPC codes, and with that, it tells you some of the hazardous ingredients that may be in uh, that food, or in your cosmetics or your toothpaste.
Hmm.
So I scan just about everything now before I even purchase it. And with some of the items, it will give you an alternate recommendation for a better purchase to make, for a healthier purchase to make.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Um,
Um,
so I guess I'm gonna just go into what I'm thinking about. I have another thing to ask you, but I want to go into it right away of you, now the nutrition testing you went through is I'm thinking obviously a different company that's like not you, but you I would think advise people to go to the nutrition testing that you went through with that company.
yes, I became an affiliate for Nucleogenics. And they not only do the testing, which is simple swab test. It's 1 minute, 60 seconds on each cheek. You mail it in and you get 4 reports back: a healthy aging report, a weight management, a skin care, and a strength and fitness report, because our genes affect all of that.
Mhm.
Um, so, and you just need to know what part of your body is being most effective if you have genes that are damaged, that are not communicating properly with your neurosystems, um, or neural pathways.
Mhm.
But one of the things is exploring the way food um, can heal your genes, or not, I hate saying heal because that's not a proper thing, but can modify the way your genes communicate, um, is such an eye opener. Uh, I know with me, I've gotten a lot more energy, a lot more clarity. Um, I would have been fumbling over words if you'd have done this with me 5 years ago. It's and I know it takes about 120 days for your genes to start changing over. So you can't expect to say, "Oh, I've cut this out for the last month. I'm not seeing a difference." No, you're not going to see a big difference. You may see some difference, but you give yourself 120 to 240 days of change, that's 6 months. You're definitely going to see weight loss. If you're overweight, you're just going to feel the difference in how your body responds to different things.
I love
And
that.
inflammation causes a lot of problems.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Some people think it causes all the problems. It's so funny you said modify instead of healed because I had just written the word healed. And I'm wondering, has the company ever has the company ever witnessed seeing the genetic change as in or healing or modification that let me give just a kind of broad yet semi-specific example. You mentioned nightshades. Has the company ever seen someone that has been directed to lessen the amount of nightshades that they eat, that it could cause a negative effect, and then a year later, 2 years later, they are able to consume nightshades no problem because of the genetic regulation?
Well, your genes are your genes, and if you start feeding them badly again, you're going to end up with inflammation again. So once you make the change, you need to stick with the change.
Okay. Um, all right. I'd be really interested if the company, if you are like in direct contact with them,
Mhm.
maybe you could ask that question. I don't know if it could be formulated a bit better of a question yet. In my experience, we do change, especially from research, our genes do change dramatically. And it could happen from thoughts, it could happen from environments, and we could improve our genes. We like change the regulation of the pathways. And sometimes when we change the pathways, then we're able to do something that we weren't able to do before, and a
Mhm.
food will affect us very differently.
Yep, that modification makes a lot of difference.
Mhm.
But if you've made the modification to help it to get
Yeah.
where you want it to be, why would you want to start feeding it badly again and help it start deteriorating again?
100%, I get that, and
That's what I feel
no,
anyway.
no, I get it 100%, and I love this quote that I think most of us know, and I was just listening to it being said twice on Tom Brory's podcast today of nothing is good or bad, it is thinking that makes it so. And you know, I'm not talking about like a Kit Kat or Twinkies. Um,
Oh, I
and
love Twinkies.
And I was just about to say, and not to judge, condemn those either.
I
Like to
don't
me,
eat them.
to me, it really depends on how we do things. It's very challenging to eat like Twinkies and stuff like that, to make it beneficial. Yet candy and ultra refined food has become integral in just about every culture and society. Someone just gave me a payday bar and like gave it to me and said like this has been blessed, we prayed over this, and I was like, I really love the prayer, yet I don't eat like these candy bars. And they're like, you could give it to someone else, and I was like considering that, and I was thinking about who would eat it, and I was just like, I don't like giving those out though. I don't
No, not the
know.
processed sugar and who knows what else is in it. Run
Yeah.
that Yucca app on the UPC code and you'll see what other hazardous
Oh, for
ingredients are
sure,
in
for
it.
sure. And I could go on, and even just like common sense someone to be like, oh, my point though is that culturally they've become such a staple, like certain foods and spiritually and religiously. And to a certain extent, we change like the vibration, we change the material effect of the food by the way we think about it. Again, to a certain extent. Um, so my point is that I'm talking about like nightshades, and for people who are listening that aren't familiar, like this is like tomatoes and eggplant, which are generally thought of as a really good food and can have super nutrient qualities. Like, we could break down like the lipocene and the phytonutrients, or even the
Mhm.
high protein content, since so many people are concerned with protein, that they're like 20% protein, they have good fiber, yet yes, I'm certainly familiar with nightshades and that a lot of people don't do well with them. And I'm
Right.
familiar with like genetic testing. Um, that's why I'm curious as to, okay, another way of putting it is sometimes I've heard people say like with wheat in particular, because we have so much wheat like 6 times a day. When I first got into nutrition and I changed my diet and I was like, wow, I'm still eating wheat like 3 times a day. Like,
Now the MSGs, though, they're gonna get you.
well, it wasn't, it was not with monosodium glutamate, the wheat, but it was like even like organic wheat
The
products
gluten.
and whole wheat products and I just would notice like, wow, I'm eating this so many times a day. And that's changed a lot. That was in the beginning when I started first learning about nutrition. And I wanted to like recreate the standard American diet, if you will, and have it in a healthier way.
Mhm.
And my point about that is many people have experienced like having so much of one nutrient, like or plant, like wheat, that they develop an aversion, like physically, nutritionally to it, and a genetic disposition where it's harming them. And then they take a break and then they are able to have it, especially in a different form, right?
Mm, okay.
Like, if you ate a tomato that was like grown by a farmer and it was a specific heirloom tomato,
Yep.
it
I
may
was
have
gonna
a
say I
bit.
can eat heirlooms. Yeah,
So there we go. It has like a completely different effect, and
right.
that's my question is like, the genetic testing, like they must see some type of variance with it that like you could eat heirlooms, figure out something there, or you could, kind of not be in a compromised position. When we're in a compromised state, like or sick, right, going
Mhm.
through a health crisis, it's much different. Like if someone has the flu or a cold, right,
Yep.
the food and they got a genetic testing at that point, their genetic testing, I think, would be vastly different than when they were at a healthier state. And most
Be
people
interesting to see.
Yeah, and most people are walking around in a highly compromised state. They don't think they're in a flu state, but most people have a mild flu-like symptoms at all times.
Interesting. Yeah, but that's probably from all the inflammation within.
So inflamed.
And they can't detox it out. That's one of the other problems with the detox gene. You're holding on to all those toxins in your body, and it's got nowhere to go but into your lymph nodes and into your brain and into your organs. That if you can't find a way to get that detox gene working properly, you're just going to get sicker.
100%. And you spoke about B12. I've heard commonly B12 is not about a intake, it's about the absorption
Right,
and assimilation. Most people get more than enough B12, but they don't absorb it properly.
right.
And yeah, we don't absorb food properly when we have so much mucoidal plaque or like build up in our intestinal tract. And a simple way of saying it is our intestinal tract is dirty. It's like we clean our outside appearance, but we don't see our inside. Most people don't get nearly enough fiber, and that, in my research and experience, is the way to clean our intestinal tract is high fiber. That's why I also am like, ooh, carb is a trigger word for me because I've never heard anyone say, I don't eat any fiber. Fiber's no good. You want to get fiber out of your diet.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
fiber is a carbohydrate. Those two words are synonyms.
But I was told as a diabetic, whenever I'm eating something to look when I read the labels on everything. And if there's carbs versus fiber, that every 1% of fiber there is, I can decrease the amount of carbs and just the numbers so it balances out, which is funny. So now I've been making sure I'm getting a fiber if there's a high amount of carb in the whatever I'm eating. So Yeah, there's
And
got to be a balance.
yeah, yeah, and it really, if we're eating whole foods, I'm thinking about this statement. Yeah, I don't believe there is any whole food that does not have fiber. Meaning a plant, every plant has fiber in it. It's literally what the plant consists of.
Yep.
It's water and fiber.
And that's the big thing. If we're not getting enough water with all that fiber, your intestinal tract is going to have a hard time processing the toxins out.
100%. Most fruits, I don't really know of any fruits that aren't like 70 to 80% water, which is interesting because that's what we are.
Mm.
60 to 80% water. That's what the earth is, 60 to 80% water. Even a banana, which seems quite dry, is 74% water.
Well, I didn't realize that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
according to the USDA. So, again, to the company, I love the name of it also. And how much is it to get that genetic testing where you get the 4 different reports with the swab test?
It is $199 to have that test. Like I said, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get the results back. And then you have the option, I can go over your test results with you, or you can have a professional medical person at Nucleogenics review your test with you for an additional $99.
Sweet. That's pretty awesome of a price. And then
Yeah.
they give you that printout that's like 20, 30 pages that you showed me at the
Oh,
market.
absolutely. And what I do when I go over it with you, I've got this DNA grouping form, and it breaks your genes down by your heart, your immune inflammation system, energy, detox, your brain, and your gut. So you can tell which part um, of your grouping or your immune system or your gene system, genetic system needs the most attention. And it's I had a friend of mine, this one in particular, and I did hers, and I'm like, Laura, how is your heart? Because there your score is pretty high here. She says, oh, I'm seeing a cardiologist. So I'm like, okay, so this is why she needed 47,000% of B12 because her body just wasn't absorbing it for her heart to work properly. And the MTHFR, again, she couldn't absorb the folate either, which affects your heart. So you just have to know what genes are not being fed right, which ones you need to feed and what you need to feed them so that you can get your heart, your immune system, your energy, your detox, your brain, and your gut all functioning properly
I
or
love that.
better, or better, I should
That's
say.
awesome. So that gave me more clarity, that answer with the question I had before. When was the last time you tested?
Um, well, I've had 2 different tests. I've had a full epigenetic 5 years ago, and then I did this nutritional genomics about 3 years ago.
And do they recommend to do it repetitively?
Well, those were 2 different tests. The
Yeah.
nutritional genomics,
No,
of
I
course, is
understand
all
that.
about what
I
nutrition.
understand that.
No, I haven't heard either doctor say that I need to be repeated to check.
I That is what I'm interested in. I would love
Yeah.
to see you take a test again because it's been 3 years and see if it says similar results or like different. I would bet money it's gonna say different a different analysis. Speaking of which, with your analysis, you just mentioned another point. Another question I have is, so it gives you a readout of a percentage of nutrients, like this is how much vitamin C, this is how much vitamin B12.
No, actually, what it does, it tells you um how many SNPs you have or how many copies of those particular genes that you've gotten, whether you didn't get that gene at all, whether you got it from one of your parents or whether you got two copies of it, one from each of your parents. And of course, if you manage to get two copies of it, that's where some of the communication breakdown is really going to start happening. Um, and that's the part that's not going to change, how many copies you've got. And maybe that'll help clarify a little bit.
It does.
But
I actually, and to clarify with my belief systems, and I actually believe that we can change even the copies of our genes. I
how
think
many of it you mean? You
the
feel
what?
how many of the copies that we've received you feel can be changed?
I think everything in our genetic structure can be changed.
That's it. That's interesting.
It's a good way of putting it instead of like,
Yeah.
you're
Because,
insane, dude.
yeah, because what I realize is I know within a DNA cell with the two strands that those strands need to communicate with each other. And if there's a snip or damage to that communication, that damaged gene is going to replicate as a damaged gene or damaged cell.
Mhm.
And that's maybe what you're talking about. If we can correct that damage, then our cell will start duplicating better and more functionable. But that's an interesting theory that you're saying. I'm gonna have to look that part of it up to see if the number does change.
Yeah,
And
so and I love your language, communication of the cell, and that brings to me language, right? So I think we could change the communication of the cell by changing the language and changing the health of the cell and
correct,
changing the maturity, we'll say, of the cell. Because a baby is not communicating at the same level as a child, and a child doesn't communicate the same level as an adult. You
because life hasn't affected them so much and they don't have that oxidative stress causing damage to those cells.
Yes, and they learn more of communicating skills. Like my Jai learns how to pronounce words differently, and he learns more words, and his brain functions differently. And to me, it functions very differently than other kids. If we're in a household that is just constantly swearing and cursing, then
Mhm.
the child is most likely to swear and curse. And me and someone had this conversation that they probably think in swears and curses.
Mm.
And if Jai is constantly getting told, I love you, you're amazing, you're a genius, we've seen in studies that when the teachers are told that the kid is a genius and an A grade student, they treat the kids differently than the D and the C students. And the
Right.
kids are treated differently, like act differently, respond differently when they're told that they have better grades. It's so
Absolutely.
interesting and a great book I think you'd really love. I would be shocked if you don't know of him, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh,
You
yes.
you are the placebo. Oh my
Yep.
Lord. That was on my list for a while. I must read all of his books. It's such an amazing read of like genetic disposition and changing. Really amazing. This is an amazing talk. So one other thing is Nucleogenics is the one company, and what's the other company's name?
Um, oh my goodness, I lost it.
That's all right. Well, you'll come back to it. How much does it cost for that company's name?
So Genetic Key is my friend Mimi Hoff who runs those tests. And depending, they're broken down, so you can order different ones. If you get the whole gamut, it's something around $500.
That's it.
But she also can do testing on children, where I don't do testing on children.
Cool. I'd love to have her as a guest on my podcast or even just communicate with her.
She would love that.
That would be great.
Yep.
I'm gonna ask her if Wim Hof is her brother real quick.
Oh, you better have a 3-hour podcast
Oh,
if you
for
get her
sure.
on.
My podcast is called OG Fit Health in 10 Minutes because I started it just as myself, just doing 10-minute podcasts, and that's what I normally
Yep,
do. I feel like so much could get changed in 10 minutes, so it's a big theme of
yep.
what I teach. Yet when I have guests, the last guest I had, we went an hour, and I love to go longer ones. Which I
Like,
think is
you think
actually
this is
like,
my passion? Wait till you hear the passion come out of her.
oh, that's awesome.
Big
Yeah,
time.
this thing does do in segments for 60 minutes for some reason. So if we go
Okay.
over, I'm just gonna like let us know, and then we'll do a second episode right now if you want.
If I can say just one last thing, if anybody wants to learn more, my book did come out, The DNA Advantage.
Hold
Um,
up a little higher so we could see your name and the full cover. Sweet. And that's how you spell her name. Yeah, hold it up higher again. Take a screenshot if y'all want, if you're all watching this in some other way. And DNA at the DNA Advantage if you're listening, and they could get that on Amazon
it's
or
on Amazon, or yeah, or just reach out to me and I'll send you the link. Um, but there's a lot of information. I mean, I poured my heart and soul into it, with the knowledge that I've gathered over the last 5 years. And I work with, like, oh, I read a lot like you do, but have physically worked with probably 5 or 6 different holistic doctors and kinesiologists, and um, all the things that they have taught me, and most recently about grounding and
Mhm.
grounding blankets and
Mhm.
EMFs. Like, I'm sitting on a grounding blanket now because I know the EMFs are flying through the computer and phones, and so it's important to keep yourself safe doing that as
my
well.
last guest, we spoke about that a lot actually.
Yeah.
And did they write on your book on the cover or the back?
Yeah.
Sweet. That's what I awesome, awesome.
Yep. My picture is there.
No, did they, the people who you just spoke about, did they write like this book is,
Oh, do I have
they're
I
like,
have
I don't know what it's called.
endorsements.
And yeah, and their endorsement.
Yep, I got endorsements. Yep.
Because you just mentioned them, and I think it's really powerful, like put them on the back cover if you have a second edition or anything like that. Because
Oh, I mean, they're
oh,
right.
it's in there. Oh, and a whole page of them. So
Yep.
cool. So awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I find that actually at the market, I don't know if you go to Tammy, she's my book dealer. She has a bookstore over there. It is such an amazing bookstore, and I buy like 7 books from her every week. And I notice myself like looking at the back of the book, and then I'll say, "Oh my Lord!" Like Tony Robbins wrote this, or the foreword to Kitchen Table Wisdom is by Dean Ornish, and Deepak Chopra's on the cover. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know who Rachel, ooh, must memorize her name. Rachel Raman is. And
Okay.
after reading her book, I'm like, oh my Lord. And so many other people like wrote in her book. But that being on the cover, my point is it really grabbed me. And now after like reading so many books and now looking at the cover like that,
Okay.
really necessarily judging a book by its cover, which I do also. Yeah, it's really that name on there. I'm like, oh, they endorse that, and it's on the front or the back. So just like a
Gotcha.
little, I think it's like when I notice me doing that, I'm like, oh wow, this could be a game changer. Because if I handed you my book and one of your role models wrote, "This is the best book I've ever read" on the topic
Mhm.
of, you'd probably be like, I'm reading that. It like changed the game a lot, right?
Right. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Network Marketing Magazine. George Madu, and I and his wife are friends, and Debbie Madu actually is one of my endorsers. So I'm pretty excited about that,
That's
getting to
awesome.
the network marketing world.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not what you know, it's who you know a lot of the times. So we got about 11 more minutes. We could definitely meet again also. Um, but this thing runs out at an hour. I'm gonna have to figure out how to change that. Is my question I like to ask people is what is your key? And what I mean by that is I break it down to an acronym. What is something you know or you feel that it would benefit everyone to know? What do you know that is the truth for you that has really changed your life so much?
I know that when you have the knowledge of your DNA health, um, and you get the right nutrition that your genes need to thrive properly, it makes a world of difference. I've seen it in, for instance, a young man that came to me who played soccer. He played soccer so much, and then his body just started shutting down, and he started getting hurt a lot. And his mom told me he had just had surgery, and that kind of sparked me. And I'm like, he had surgery. I bet he's not detoxing the anesthesia out of his body. Um, so I said, let's test you to see if you have that detox gene. And when he tested, he not only had that, but he had a couple of other things that I formulated in my head. And he started on the compounded nutrition. That's one of the things, I don't know if I mentioned, that when you take that test, they actually compound nutrition supplements based on the results of your testing. So he started taking that, and I also suggested he take the detox drops that we have. And within 3, 4 months, he was back in college and he was back playing soccer. And that's just one of my stories that warms my heart.
That is awesome. And do they always give a supplement package, or is there like recommendations to get the supplements naturally through food?
Nope, they actually compound the nutritional supplement for you based on your results.
Cool, cool. And
Mhm.
then the E of key, that is a great story. The E of key is educate, which the root word of educate is educe or educer, which means to bring out from within, bring out without from within. Like there is some knowledge in all of us that is to be brought out. What is the biggest like education aspect that you think, and it's very similar. Yeah, I love reiterations as what
Right.
to know. What do
Yeah.
you think is the biggest thing that like you feel like is inherent knowledge that could be brought out of everyone that was brought out of you that's so important to share?
Yeah. So like 5 years ago, like I said, when my friend said, "Hey, let's epigenetic test you," and I didn't have a clue. So I needed to be educated what that was. And then I learned about nutritional genomics. Then I needed to be educated about that. Those two words were not in my knowledge base. So I want to get that knowledge base out to people and let them know that it's available. It's an available option if they're stuck with their health and they can't seem to get better and they don't know what is wrong. Let's try to get to the root of the problem. And the root usually starts with our gut. So we need to get our gut cleaned up. Um, I've got another friend who uh, arthritis is so bad, rheumatoid arthritis, crippling. And when we tried to give her, uh, her body doesn't detox right. And so when we tried to give her nutrition, it was attaching and it was making her sicker because she needed to detox first before we tried to feed her the good stuff. So even though there's a negative before the positive, um, stick with it and learn what you need to do. Don't just give up because you didn't get sick overnight and you're not going to get better overnight.
That pushes me to a question that I think a lot of people in the health industry, especially nutritionists, go through is how do you deal with the adherence rate? Like, is it because it's a supplement? Is it because it's written out and genetically tested that you have a higher success with adherence? Because, like, let's put it this way. Most people know to move a bit every day and to get a little movement in. I actually prescribe a 10-minute movement pattern. I have a pretty good adherence rate with it because it's 10 minutes. Yet even that, sometimes my students are like, oh, I missed it. I missed it today. I missed it. I haven't been doing it for the past week or month because all this was happening. How do you improve adherence rate?
That's a mindset.
For sure.
We need to work on the mindset and open-mindedness if we really want something to happen in our lives. If you're walking around with a closed mind, like only this one doctor is gonna fix me,
Yeah.
not one doctor knows everything.
Hmm.
That's why we have specialists.
Hmm.
And and those specialists focus on their specialties. They're not a gynecologist isn't going to know everything about a nutritionist. The nutritionist isn't going to know about the orthopedics.
Hmm.
They're just not taught that. So sometimes you have to be your own medium, your own advocate, and say, "Oh, this is what I've learned. What do you know about this? And if you don't know, who do you recommend that I can go talk to?" I That's why we have secondary opinions,
100%.
maybe third opinions or fourth opinions,
Yeah,
because you might need more information from other people, other doctors.
I agree 100%.
And we need to have more Eastern medicine meeting Western medicine.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. As far as your patients or your clients or people who genetically tested with you, how do you increase their mindset to follow the like to take the supplements every day? Even some people just won't take the supplements, or in a case like someone who really loves to eat tomatoes, right? Um, and they're told to not eat nightshades or wheat, and they're told to not eat wheat. And they're just like, oh, I'm having a really hard time. Have you ever had an experience with that and any success in to change over that mindset?
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make
Yeah,
him drink.
yeah. I
Uh,
thought you'd just be like, I have the answer to everything here. Because
no,
that's the ultimate. When we can figure
I
that
will
out.
ask more questions to make sure they understand
Yeah,
why. And maybe I'll go back to their test results and say, did you forget about this gene? That if you're not feeding it right, what's going to happen?"
yeah.
And most of it's a misunderstanding or not understanding. And that's what I have found anyway. Or timing is everything. You go over the reports in the beginning, even with me, I didn't understand all those reports. It's taken me almost 5 years to really get into understanding what all these genes do and how they do it and how they work together. So you can't expect a client to understand with one sitting. You
Oh,
have to go back
100%.
to them, and the follow-up is so important.
I agree. That's why I work with my students for a year because mindset takes a while to load, like a computer loading. I'm going to stop and start this so anyone listening on the podcast, you will be able to continue this talk. We're going to do a part two right now. So please jump on to the next podcast. If you're watching on video, we're going to just keep it continuing. And hopefully YouTube doesn't have a limit for my time there. Oh, I forgot that this will take a minute to actually load up. Um, well, maybe the podcast will miss it a little bit because I don't want to put us on hold for too long here. My next question is, oh, there we go. So I could just hit save and then write special guest, Patty. Um,
Stegel.
yeah, I'm gonna just write your what was it?
Latch,
Your Daily Nourishment.
your daily nourishment.
And I'm gonna actually title it differently later, and we could discuss that too. Nourishment. Oh, nourishment. That's not even the title, but oh, I could actually add to this episode, I think, huh? Um, and go. All right. Fantastic. We're back on the podcast. Pardon me if you're watching on video for that minute or two where I'm figuring things out. So my third question in the key, the why is yield. Yield, I've learned recently, is we yield to a positive energy, a higher power, greater information. We surrender to an enemy. So I've been using the word yield recently, and I'm wondering, what do you yield to, and what do you think is, yeah, what do you yield to? What is like a power or information that is very important that you yield to? Could be spirituality, could be intellectually, just whatever comes to mind.
You know, over the years, especially during COVID, um, when most people sat around being depressed and saying there's nothing to do, I dove into personal development. Personal development is so important. Um, if you're not feeding your mind the right things, it's going to falter. Just like your body, if you're not feeding your body the right nutrition, it's going to falter. So you've got to feed your mind good, positive, motivational things. You can see my bookshelf back there, which is full, yeah, I see, of motivational books from every source. Let's see. Well, I don't want to turn around, but um, I've got too many. I can't even read them all. But Michael Burnoff, a communication specialist, he's amazing. I've probably got 3 of his books up there. It, being able to communicate um, is such an important realm of our world. Um, and our world is getting smaller and smaller every day. I mean, I go to Japan and I into somebody from my hometown. It's like you don't know where you're going to see people, and we're because we travel. We love to travel, and but you just have to want to meet people, learn about people, and that's how you continue to grow. Personal growth is just, I think, number one for me.
I love
And
that.
God is, I mean, God is always number one. He's my strength and my source, but then people.
I love that answer. And yeah, I actually, kind of always expect people to say God, yet I do my best to create that question to be open-ended so I could hear even more because to me, God created us to create. And it's so important we create and create relationships, create more growth in ourselves, create externalities, yet all the externalities start with our internal imagination to create our external world. And it's so beautiful what we're capable of. Just, I remember when my goal was to read 1 page a day, and now it's to read a book a day. I was just reading Paul R. Scheele, and he has a book called Photo Reading. Natural Brilliance is another book I've read of his. Just an amazing genius. He has so many books. And yeah, I love to read from amazing authors. They've changed my life from David R. Hawkins with Power versus Force to
Mhm.
Howling Tipping with Radical Forgiveness. It's changed me so much. I love that Power versus Force. Read that whole Trinity. Speaking of like endorsements, he has Mother Teresa on the back of that book.
Oh my goodness. Whoop,
Yeah, it's really
my light just went off. Uh-oh. Okay. Can you
that's
still
right.
see me? Let me
I
see.
could
Hang
still
on a
see you
second.
perfect. Oh, it turned back on, I think.
Oh, I don't know. That's weird. I've never had that go off before.
Well, we started
I'm
talking about
sorry.
super high consciousness. It's okay. I could see you perfectly. And we're just about to end.
Yeah.
I'll let you
Wow.
deal with that. This was such an amazing talk. I will send you the YouTube recording, and the podcast is in two pieces. Um, or maybe it's in one piece. I don't know if I added it to it, but this was such a blessing, Patty. I learned so much. I'm so excited to work with you in the future and to be in
Oh, me too. Thank
communication
you.
with you. I'm actually looking forward to getting that genetic testing also, actually. I'm gonna do that soon enough.
Well, that'll be good. And if I ever catch up with you again at the market, I'd love you to introduce me to the woman who's got the books.
Oh yeah, I'm actually like a little nervous you're gonna be taking the books that I'm ready to get, but
No, no.
no, I'm
Might
sure
see if she'll take a couple of mine and put them there.
we could trade. Oh, she definitely takes donations, but yeah, we could
Okay.
always exchange books too. I'm a little funky with my books that I actually buy repeaters, so I have doubles of a bunch of mine, but
Yep.
I definitely love to just buy, as you said, more books than I could read. I'll pass them on to Jai. I plan to buy a whole house to be able to have a library.
That's cool. I'm not liking this that I lost all my light. Oh my goodness.
I know, I could tell. You got a great background. It's all right. Beautiful picture, the dolphins, so great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. So yeah, if there's anything else you want to conclude with, we could conclude.
No, I really appreciate you inviting me to come chat with you. It's always an education speaking with people. One of the other things people say, oh, no, I'm not on social media, but me being on social media is where I have met my new community of entrepreneurial women, especially who all have stories that needed to be heard. And if you're not listening to somebody's story, it's like you don't judge people until you've walked into their shoes, walked in their shoes, because there's some heartbreaking stories out there from people that who need to be heard and need to be listened to. So
100%. And sometimes we don't get that feeling until the second mile. And instead of walking a mile in someone's shoes, it's nice to be able to be present with them, walk that marathon,
mm,
because there's so much to share. And it's so amazing how we could learn from others. And again, if we're not learning from others, it is ourselves that like is being the fool. I've heard it put another way, like, you know, anyone could learn even from the town fool. Like you're
mhm,
replacing the town fool if you're not going to learn from him. And I would definitely like say, no matter what intelligence level, it's the person that doesn't learn that's lacking intelligence, not the person that like is saying, I can't learn from that person. You know,
right.
'cause I've learned from a baby that isn't able to speak. I've learned so much, you know.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so amazing. I think we'll be there. We normally come on Sundays. I think I saw you on a Saturday, right?
I'm there Saturday and Sunday, but this week I'm going to Maine and next week I will be in Arizona. So
Oh,
it'll be
we'll
3 weeks
travel.
before I'm back there.
We'll be there. We're there just about every Sunday. I am going away
Okay.
soon too. I don't know if that's 3 weeks from now. I think it's 2 weeks from now. It might, I think I'm coming back on that weekend to see my mentor. So
Okay.
awesome. I super appreciate you. And when I see you there, I will definitely introduce you to Tammy. She's amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
And
much,
I thank
Patty.
everybody who's been listening and love to hear some feedback.
Awesome. Yeah. Friend up Patty on social media. And Patty, if you're sharing this with other people, Patty's friends, friend me up. I'm Dr. Keith J. Lopez,
Yep.
mainly Facebook, but I'm on all platforms as that.
Perfect.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much,
Have a
Keith.
great day.
All right.